Welcome everyone to Charts Focus 1, where we teach you how to work hard and trade smart. Now, before I start the video, I want to remind you guys that this is a very short week. So if you guys don't want to trade, do not trade. It's as simple as that. And we will be looking at names that are still forming their chart patterns, their respective chart patterns, and I would assume that those chart patterns will still be forming by the end of this week, possibly maybe a breakout by Friday, but most likely we will not see that. So if you guys don't want to trade anything from the newsletter or from last week's names, you don't need to, right? Just watch and look at the market price action. Okay, so just get involved by watching the relative movements across the entire market. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and look at SPY. So SPY, I mentioned this a couple of times, I believe maybe 3 weeks ago. We're making a cup and handle, and we may have broken out of that last week. So let me show you guys what I mean. So this is the cup that I mentioned, and I'll actually just draw it out for you guys as well. So the handle is right there. Okay, so we have a nice looking cup and handle. Now we can also look at it this way, right? The cup and handle, all right? But if I choose the second cup and handle chart pattern, then that means that we haven't broken out yet, all right? And thankfully, okay, no matter what cup and handle chart pattern that you want to look at, okay, either this one, this descending channel for the handle, or this rounding bottom for the handle, we have the same neckline. And what is that neckline? This $400 level. Okay, so this $400 level is critical because remember, it's a psychological whole number level, right? So a psychological whole number level is something that we need to be looking out for because the price will be immediately attracted to it, especially when we've closed so close to the $400 level, right? So in order for us to really get a good grasp of where we're headed for this week, I would assume that we will first retest $400, and that will also give us a retest on the weekly 50 SMA. Now, I am also suspecting that we can head up higher. Why? Well, because there's one or two reasons. Okay, so number one reason is that we have closed above the 10 SMA, okay, on the weekly time frame, and we've also managed to close above the 21 SMA. This is a very bullish sign. And now you might be wondering, wait a second, Andrew. We've seen the price already do this on the weekly time frame in the past. And you're right, we have, right? And we've seen it happen right over here. Okay, so this is a similar situation where we saw the 10 SMA crossing above the 21, and then the price stays above the 21 and the 10 SMAs, right? They're staying above the momentum SMAs on the weekly time frame. So that's obviously a bullish signal. However, okay, there's something very different about this candlestick that we got last week. We actually closed up a lot higher above the 10 and the 21 SMAs. And that's completely different from what we got over here, right? So when we first closed above the 10 SMA and the 21 SMA on this candlestick, we attempted to move up slightly higher, okay, around 4 points higher, and then we immediately rejected, right? And we weren't able to hold the 10 and 21 SMAs. So what should that say for the next few weeks? We need to break out of 400 and break above the 50 SMA that we've retested multiple times this entire year. And I've also have talked about the 50 SMA for the entire year of 2022. So if you're able to break above the $400 level, the psychological level, and the weekly 50 SMA, we should have an impulsive third or fourth leg higher to the upside. And this breakout can be for multiple weeks. And why do I assume this? Well, we've had that while we're making those oversold bounces, or just, very volatile bounces during the 2022 downtrend. Okay, so obviously we're still in the downtrend, but if we do break out, okay, we can use the past here to really determine whether or not we can have such multi-week breakouts. Okay, so it's very plausible and probable for us to assume that if we do break above $400, a lot of shorts will be kicked out and a lot more buying momentum will come back in as investors and traders alike get a lot more confidence in the overall market performance. Right, so we need to watch out for hold above the 10 SMA at all times on the weekly time frame. So first of all, again, the 10, okay, the close above the 10 and the 21 and the 10 crossover above the 21 is a great bullish indication. We just can't have another situation like we saw here, where we saw an immediate rejection and we formed what we call a bearish engulfing candlestick. Right, so hopefully we don't reject right away at the 450 SMA conversion point here, right? And instead we have a nice impulsive run up to the upside and possibly retest 408.20 a third time. Okay, so we retested it once and then second time here, and then hopefully we can get another third retest. And that will also confirm the potential breakout and chart pattern of this cup and handle. Okay, because remember, a chart pattern for a cup and handle is inherently bullish. All right, so that's it for the market. Let's take a look at our first ticker. Tesla. So Tesla, I'm really liking this one because first of all, we're looking at a potential inverse head and shoulders. Okay, so last week, well, actually the entirety of last week, we're forming the right shoulder. So we have our left shoulder, our inverted head, and then our right shoulder. And the neckline here for this chart pattern is at 123.50, which is the reason why I give you guys a long entry over 123.50, because that'll be a great entry point. Now, if you guys want a more confirmed entry point, I would say 126 is a confirmed entry point, because by that time, we'll also get a retest of the daily 21 SMA as well. And I expect a rejection from the 21 SMA on the first retest, as with every other EMA or SMA. It doesn't really matter what you guys use, but 126 will be the confirmation level. Now, for this inverse head and shoulders, this is the chart pattern that I've been waiting on, and that's the reason why I also am still swinging Tesla from last week. All right, I got in a position, I think, was it Thursday? It was Thursday, and then I also added on Friday as well. But I'm expecting to add again once we're able to break above 123.50, because remember, we also have the gamma expiration on January 20th. So we can see a huge move up higher, another leg up higher for Tesla. And if we do break above on that 126 resistance level, we can see a confirmation of a reversal to the upside. And that will also give us a nice momentum run up as we're staying above both the 10 and 21 SMAs. Remember, the 10 and 21 is my momentum pair. Okay, so with Tesla here, I want to keep it simple, right? We potentially had a capitulation day on January 6th, where we made that new low in the new year, right? And we had a very, very large bounce. We were very bullish for this entire day, and we continued to move up, and we obviously gapped up the very next day or the very next week. And so this could potentially be where sellers have capitulated, and we won't be seeing a lot more selling going on. Now, the only thing that I'm wary about this week is that we can most certainly move sideways. And if we do move sideways, I would at least expect us to respect 120 as support and 123.50 as resistance. Okay, so our second name here is YUM. So YUM on the weekly time frame, right? So remember, guys, let me remind you guys again. We're going to be focusing on a lot of weekly time frames. All right, we're trying to look at the broader perspective, the longer term perspective. So YUM is making an incredible flag, right? I mean, this is just a textbook bull flag after an impulsive run up since October lows here, right? And so we're still sticking to all-time high levels. And this is one of those names that you need to have on your watch list, right? Especially if the market starts to reverse, because these names will still make higher highs, right? Because of the fact that they've held near the highs, near the all-time high levels, and with very, very good relative strength. And for the fact that we've had this impulsive run up and we're now making a bull flag, there's a good chance that we can break over 132.15, which is the flag resistance here, and also the confirmed entry point, and make a new all-time high point above 137.21, which was our previous all-time high print. So if you go back on the daily time frame now, we've been consolidating very, very well. And Friday, we had a nice bullish engulfing candlestick with some very good volume. Now the average volume is falling down, which is great, and it makes sense because the volume tends to fall down, the average volume tends to fall down whenever we're forming a chart pattern, right? When we're starting to accumulate into a new chart pattern after a very nice impulsive move up. And this also applies to any impulsive moves to the downside as well, right? So YUM, definitely look out for this one. This is surfing the 10 and 21 SMAs in the daily time frame, and it's also about to see a nice test of support on the 50 SMA. So once we're able to get really close to the 50 SMA as we did on Friday, which also leads me to believe that the bears are gone and the bulls are back in full force on this name. I expect us to see a nice breakout above 132 for a confirmation entry point and eventually hit new all-time highs. Now, if you guys want an earlier entry, you can simply get a new, not a new, an easy entry over the previous high of the day. And what is that? Well, the previous high of the day was in this candlestick. So on Friday's candlestick, which was 130.29. So you guys can just get an entry point above that number, or a slightly earlier entry by a couple of cents around 130.20. Okay, so our third name here is DOCU. Now, this is a chart that I've also haven't changed at all. So this drawing that I gave you guys a couple of weeks ago is practically showing us that the price is following exactly what I drew. So I drew this drawing, I think somewhere around here. Yeah, so in one of these days right here, I drew this drawing and it's following almost to a T. So this tells me that first of all, that the price is relatively strong, and we're holding the gap up that we made on earnings. So the earnings gap up is being held, and that's a very good criteria for a new uptrend forming. So for the fact that we've been making higher lows, right, and higher highs for the past 2 weeks, tells me that there is a good chance that we can move up higher. So for this one, there's a potential for us to move back down slightly to make another new higher low, and that can be another retest at 56, which is a nice daily and intraday level of support, or we can just get a nice entry point over the high of the day of Friday, right? So the previous high of the day, which was 58.85, and you guys can just round that up to 59.10, and so that will be our early entry for this week for DOCU. But again, there is that slight risk of us coming back down to 56. But again, if you guys don't want to trade this week, all right, you can give this one more time to consolidate. And once it does, the official confirmation entry point will be over 61.50. This level right here. Okay, we use this level as a previous level of support, and now we're using as a new level of resistance. And we also had rejected from, we had retested this level and then we rejected right away from the 61.50 level. And so that confirms that this level can be a very, very big level in the near-term future. And I can see that the 200 SMA is also creeping up on this level. So that also kind of confirms my presumptions here. Okay, so if you guys don't want to trade at all, and just you want to wait for the full trading week, look for 61.50 as your confirmation entry point in the next few weeks. All right, so our fourth name here is Adobe. So Adobe is obviously, okay, on the weekly time frame, very, very nice. Why? Well, we're looking at a very good macro base that spans a couple of months here, so about 3 months. And for the fact that we had the weekly 10 SMA finally crossing over the 21 SMA gives me more confidence that this one is ready to move to the upside. And as a reminder, okay, we have not seen the 10 SMA crossing above the 21 SMA and also holding it, okay, after a couple of weeks, okay, since the bull run that we had since 2020 to 2021. Right? And obviously we did see a attempt to get back above the 21 SMA by the 10 around here, but we immediately failed and we just smacked right back down. And I believe that was also on earnings week as well. So with every single catalyst out the way, with also the recent earnings out the way, right, this base just tells me, right, that this one's ready to move to the upside. And just fundamentally, guys, Adobe is very, very strong. And for the fact that we haven't moved anywhere after a pretty good solid earnings for a big tech company, and also a big tech company that hasn't seen those large layoffs just yet, gives me more of a technical edge here, right, with that fundamental background information in my head. So on the daily time frame here, we're also seeing again a very, very nice base. You can see that very clearly, and we're also riding and surfing that 10 and 21 SMA, and eventually we will have to catapult away from the 50 SMA as well, because frankly we're a little bit too close, and I would like to see a very, very fast impulsive move away from this large SMA. And eventually I want to see a retest of the 200 SMA on the daily time frame. So our entry point for this week will be 346.10. All right, so this is a intraday and daily level here that you guys can see, 346. Okay, but again, if you guys don't want to trade this week, just like for DOCU, the confirmation level will be 351. All right, that is our resistance for this base. And remember, this base spans from 324.50 all the way to 351. All right. Okay, so our fifth name here is Pinterest. So as you guys should already know, we have leaps. All right, we have very, very long-term expiration contracts. So you guys can go back on the CFO Discord and search up the position that you guys are supposed to be in. Now, Pinterest here is providing a very, very nice, like extremely nice base, as it's forming this ascending triangle base. And for the fact that we've broken above a very critical and heavy level of resistance at 26.50 and closing above it gives me more of a bullish bias for this name, because again, after I would say 5 to 6 months of consolidation, right, of this very, very nice macro base or a ascending triangle base, it gives me a confidence that this is mostly accumulation, right, where we saw a lot of buyers coming in and buyers holding up the support levels as they continue to buy, especially around this $22 level, right? And also sellers kind of coming in here and there, especially at the 26.50. But how do we know that the buyers were strong? Well, or stronger? was that they've held a very critical level of support of $22, right? And especially we made higher lows, right? And now that we've made higher highs as well last week, that gives me more confirmation to be more bullish for the next few upcoming weeks and upcoming months. And that should only hold up if the market holds up as well. All right. The sixth name here we have is Shop. Okay. So Shopify, I told you guys this already. It's a laggard, right? It's a huge laggard. And in the weekly time frame, we're looking at an inverse head and shoulders, just like Tesla. All right, except this one's a lot more elongated and it had a lot more time to base out. And so we've had a very critical level of support around 27.80ish to around 28. Okay, I would just say 28 to just keep it simple. And we had a very critical level of resistance of 45. And this is our official neckline resistance for our inverse head and shoulders. And for all the people who don't understand what a neckline is, well, just think about it this way, okay? So we have a head and shoulders, right? So we have two shoulders and we have one head. And what's below the head? We have a neck. So that's it. That's literally it, right? That's the neckline of a head and shoulders chart pattern or an inverse head and shoulders chart pattern. So Shopify, again, is a laggard and we're still forming that right shoulder. So if you want to see a breakout, I would suggest that you wait until we get back above 45, right? And we retest it for the third time here since we started making this chart pattern, right? 1, 2, and then a third time will be hopefully in the next few coming weeks or even next month. Now, obviously, you guys can still potentially ride it to the upside, and you guys should also be able to see that this pattern here looks very similar, right? So if we completely forget about the inverse head and shoulders and focus on just the head and the right shoulder, you can see that we're looking at a potential cup and handle. And where do we see this? Well, at the start of this video, I showed you guys SPY. So Shopify is kind of strictly following what SPY is doing. So if this week gives us just simple consolidation, slight pullback, and then sideways, it'll be good for Shop because after moving straight up for 3 weeks back to back, right, consecutive 3 weeks of just moving straight up, and for the fact that we've closed above this descending level of resistance on the handle, okay, on the cup and handle chart pattern, we can see another retest potentially around 37.80, or if you want to keep it simple, around 38. And that can also be your entry point for this week. However, if we see a potential continuation of the uptrend in the overall markets, in the broader markets, we can see Shopify breaking above the previous high of the week, right? And also previous high of the day on Friday, okay, which was 39.07. We can see a good confirmed entry for this week, only this week, over 39.10. Okay, obviously the confirmed long-term entry point will be over 45. Okay, so our seventh name here is JD, our second to last name. So this is a Chinese name, and as you guys already know, I've told you guys this already in the CFO Discord as well multiple times, but smart money is parked in China, right? Every single dip, every single pullback is being bought ferociously, right? So just based on the chart pattern here, and the multiple chart patterns that we can see, and the price action and the volume after we bounced over 40.50, okay, tells us that institutions are heavy in Chinese names. And the reason why I'm looking at JD is that on the weekly time frame, we have a very heavy level of resistance around $67, right? And that's also where we rejected 2 weeks ago, including last week, right? So on this weekly candlestick, we rejected off of that at 67.10 on the dot. So again, if you guys want to look at the confirmed entry point for the longer term, I would say wait until we get a nice retest of 67.10 and then get a long-term entry over 67.20, right? This will be our confirmed entry point. But if you want to take a entry point potentially for this short week, okay, 65.10 can also be very, very good. Why? Well, on the daily time frame, we're making a nice flag here as we're surfing the 10 and 21 SMAs, right? We're holding the momentum SMAs, this pair here. And for the fact that we're about to see on the daily time frame, the 50 SMA crossing over the 200, which is what we call a golden cross that can give us a longer term confirmation for this name. And we can get a lot more bullishness coming back in after a horrible looking Friday candlestick. All right. So obviously we rejected from 65. So there is a heavy level of resistance. How do we know this? Well, just simply based on last week's price action and a couple months back as well from last year. So this one's a very, very easy one to follow, very clear levels. The only thing that you need to be wary about for Chinese names are the very, very large gap ups and very, very large gap downs. Okay, so if you don't want to be too screwed over overnight by what the chart is telling you, just focus on the weekly, right? And why do I say this? Well, just take a look right over here. Okay, so this is between November to early December. And if I go back to the weekly time frame, it looks like nothing has ever happened. Right? So this is how you change perspectives, right? It just looks like we have a nice run up, slight pullback, and then another leg up higher. And compared to the daily time frame, we had a bunch of gap ups and then gap downs, right? You'd be ripping your hair out if you were focusing on the daily time frame. So if you don't want to rip your hair out, focus on the weekly. So our last name here, okay, is CENX. This is our 8th name that we're looking at for this short week. So this is a aluminum company, right? We can see it right here. It's a Century Aluminum Company is the name for this ticker symbol. And we saw a lot of commodities running straight up at the start of this year and kind of trickled down from I would say around the last 2 weeks of last year. So we're still getting that bullish uptrend on a lot of commodities, and a lagging individual sector in the commodities industry is aluminum, and we're starting to see certain breakouts across the sector here, and specifically AA broke out last week very, very nicely. So this one is now starting a nice what we call stage 2 breakout as attempts to continue up higher and potentially revisit all-time high price levels. So I expect to see CENX this week to follow through, right? To have a nice sympathy move up for the next week and next couple of weeks actually. But the only thing is on the weekly time frame, we have broken below the weekly 200 SMA. And that's not a good thing, and we're still staying below it. However, this inverse head and shoulders chart pattern gives me a hint that accumulation is coming on, right? And we're seeing a lot more buyers coming back in and potentially seller exhaustion here because we formed this base. This is still a base, right? An overall macro base as it refuses to move lower and move away from the 200 SMA, right? It would make sense that we make another leg lower, but we haven't. And instead, we made this inherently bullish chart pattern based right underneath the 200 SMA and attempted 3 times to try to retest the 200 SMA on the weekly time frame. How do we know this? Well, one time right here, a second time here, and then our third time right here where we actually touched and retested the 200 SMA. So we have a neckline of $10. And we made a high point last week at 10.50. So if you guys want to wait a few more cents, since I gave you guys a confirmed entry point at 10.20, or if you guys just want to wait 30 more cents to see an entry point of potentially better and more conviction entry point than the one we have here, then you can wait for an entry point over 10.50. Why? Well, because the price is telling you that it wants to go over last week's high. And whenever we tend to break over last week's high or last day's high, right, previous week or previous day's highs, that tends to let you know that bulls are in control and we have a lot more upside left. And especially in this specific sector and the overall commodities industry, aluminum is lagging. All right, we've seen steel names, we've been seeing copper names, we've been seeing no, not copper, I believe every other non-energy commodities, right, have been moving upward, right? Oh, so like steel, steel, other different types of metals, right? Yeah, stuff like that, nickel, they've all been starting to kind of bounce and start a new uptrend. All right, so that is it for this week. It's a very long video. I apologize, but I really want to go into every single setup here. And again, let me remind you before the video ends here, you do not need to trade this week. I suspect that we get some type of consolidation, a slight pullback, and some consolidation. But ideally, I do want to see a continuation to the upside. So let's hope for the best and hope that the market continues to move up higher. We will be watching the price action as always. And overall, good luck. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for the live stream. And remember, we do not have the market opening on Monday. All right. So on Tuesday is when we will have our live stream.